This is the 20th video presentation for the Case Animal course. As you view the video, make notes of important information. Pause, repeat, and resume the video whenever necessary. Genetic Fun DeMendels, Lesson 7.1, A New Pair of Genes. You just completed Activity 7.1.2, Splitting Genes, where you sketched and labeled the steps of meiosis to understand how ova and sperm undergo meiosis and mitosis for development of new cell tissue. Understanding inherited traits and basic genetics is an important aspect of animal production. Producers must be able to apply the concepts of genetics to breeding animals if they wish to achieve the desired phenotypic characteristics in offspring. Gregor Mendel was an Austrian monk in the mid-1800s. He conducted experiments with pea plants to discover the principles of heredity. Mendel's laws of dominance, segregation, independent assortment, and unit characters help us understand how inheritance works. A gene is the simplest unit of inheritance and influences certain genetic traits in living things. Genes are carried in the chromosomes in the gametes. They are passed from parent to offspring through the process of meiosis and mitosis during sexual reproduction. The genetic transfer of traits from parent to offspring is called heredity or inheritance. Genotype is the genetic makeup of living things. Individual organisms of the same genotype breed alike. It will be important to distinguish between genotype and phenotype. Phenotype is the observed characteristics of an individual organism without reference to its genetic makeup. Individuals of the same phenotype look alike, but may not breed alike. Visual appearances, such as color, presence of horns in cattle, and height are examples of phenotype. Each characteristic or trait has two genes, one derived from each parent. If both genes for a characteristic are the same, the animal is homozygous for that characteristic. If two genes differ for a given characteristic, the animals are heterozygous. If there are two different traits trying to be expressed, what are the mechanisms for the decision? Without the laws of inheritance, we would assume traits have an equal chance of expression. However, Mendel proved evidence of genetic dominance among gene pairs. Therefore, traits can be predicted with some certainty. A dominant gene overrides the recessive gene and is visible in the organism's physical characteristics. This is referred to as a dominant trait. The other gene partner of heterozygous traits will not be seen in the phenotype. However, it does still remain in the genotype. When crossed with another animal containing the same recessive trait, some offspring may show the recessive characteristic. As mentioned in a previous slide, knowledge of dominant and recessive traits may help in predicting offspring. Here are some rules for you to remember as the Punnett Square method is introduced. Each gene is signified by a letter and is paired with another. One gene inherited from each parent. A capitalized letter represents a dominant gene. A lowercase letter represents a recessive gene. A Punnett Square tool will help you predict offspring from breeding pairs of genes. Let's see a specific example for the rules for using a Punnett Square by examining the polled trait in Herefords. If polled is a dominant trait, it is represented by the capital P. If a parent has homozygous genes for the polled trait, the gene pair would be two capital P's. If the parent has genes for both polled and horn traits, the heterozygous gene pair would have a capital P and a lowercase p. The homozygous recessive gene pair, consisting of two lowercase p's, would code for the horn trait. This is an example of a simple Punnett square for a single gene pair. You will have one parent at the top of the square with two potential genes to pass on to offspring across the top. This parent is homozygous polled and will pass only capital P genes onto its offspring. The parent on the left side is also homozygous polled and will also pass only capital P genes onto the offspring. The empty spaces in the square represent every possible combination of parent genes during fertilization. Remember, each offspring will receive one gene from each parent, so there will be two genes in each offspring box. Try a practice Punnett square to build foundation knowledge related to dominance. Pause the video as you fill the Punnett square in your notes. Resume the video to check your answers. Each potential combination results in homozygous polled offspring, since all possible combinations result in two capital P's. Therefore, the predicted percentage of polled offspring is 100%. If the parent crossing produced 100 new offspring, all 100 would have the phenotype polled trait. Now let's try another mating between two parents which both have heterozygous genes. Both parents have one capital P and one lowercase p. This simple example will illustrate how recessive genes are still part of the genetic makeup, even though the parents do not show different phenotypic characteristics. Remember, a combination of two lowercase p's result in a Hereford with horns. Pause the video as you complete this Punnett square in your notes. Resume the video to check your answers. Once the Punnett square is completed, you should determine that the recessive gene, or lowercase p, is present in 75% of the potential crosses. However, when paired with a dominant gene in a heterozygous pair, the recessive trait will not be expressed. Therefore, you can predict that 75% of the offspring will be polled, and only a 25% chance will exist for the offspring growing a set of horns. As a review, mark or highlight 3 key points in your notes that are important to remember from this presentation. List 2 ideas or concepts that relate to previous knowledge. List any questions you have about this topic, and discuss these questions with your instructor. Keep any notes you have from this presentation organized and available for use throughout the course. Through Activity 713, Drosophila Genetic Simulation, you will perform computer simulations related to genetic inheritance in order to learn about the role genetics plays in animal production. This will help you understand how dominant and recessive genes determine the phenotypic characteristics of animals. Your instructor will share specific instructions for Activity 713, Drosophila Genetics Simulation.